Now that Miles Morales has been gifted the power of the Iron Spider, will him and the other New York-based heroes be able to make their final stand against Cletus Kasady? Well, let's hop into the pages of Carnage Reigns Omega, the grand finale of the Carnage Reigns event, and find out what happens next together, shall we? So then, picking up directly from where the last issue left off, Miles and Tony are desperately trying to regroup to figure out what they're going to do next to try and stop kaiju-sized Cletus. Admittedly, all their ideas aren't exactly great. The only thing they can come up with is maybe if they can cut away all the symbiote goo from the giant metal iron shell, then maybe, just maybe, they can get to Cletus's gooey center and finally do away with him. Granted, this also causes something of a moral conundrum for young Miles. Cletus might very well be one of the worst people ever to walk the earth, but is killing him really the answer? What will that do to Miles down the line? It's an interesting premise, but one that this story doesn't see to fruition, which is actually something I'm going to end up saying a lot in this issue. Likewise, the Cape Killers once again actually show off their inner hero as Iron Man and Miles Spider-Man deal with Cletus. They run around and try and rescue as many people as possible, though unfortunately it's those very same people who turn around and try and eat our team. As you'll recall, Carnage bonded with a bit of Extremis, which essentially means now he can spread his consciousness over smaller and smaller pieces. This is another thing that makes defeating Cletus right now incredibly difficult, because unless they're able to purge all of the symbiote influence, he'll simply just regrow himself and reform like we've seen him do several times throughout this series. It's here too, feeling that the end game is upon him, that Cletus opts to call in his fan club, all those internet form warriors who were given their own symbiote suits. And honestly, despite being built up since this series began, they ultimately end up not doing much. Their designs are pretty cool though. I like that the red on the Iron Man suit is all gooey and symbiote-y. As Miles and Iron Man find out, even though a lot of the old symbiote tricks don't work on kaiju-sized Cletus anymore, sound and electricity still manage to defeat these rank-and-file drones pretty easily. Again, don't know why they were given such a place of prominence in this event story across several issues when they end up not actually doing much. Some characters who do actually end up being more important than you might have thought, though, are actually Kenneth Neely and Red Goblin. You see, Agent Gao plans to drop the now conscious Red Goblin back into the fight in hopes that he can suck up all the excess symbiote like he did before. Unfortunately, though, Kenneth Neely has his own plans. He takes control of the chopper, vowing now is finally the time for him to join Cletus's orchestra of death. Obviously, Cletus doesn't think very much of Kenneth at all and tries to squish him like a little bug, but not before eventually calling back the little piece of symbiote that he put inside him. In fact, in order to recover from what small injuries he actually did suffer during the battle with the heroes, Cletus does call back the rest of his symbiote, even from his drones, which ends up having a rather unforeseen side effect. As now Cletus is forced to hear the voices of Kenneth and the others talking to him, Kenneth especially lays into Cletus, saying that despite terrorizing an entire city and amassing great power thanks to Extremis, Cletus is still only a bug, a small speck when compared to the godlike power his other Carnage is currently amassing out in the universe right now. This weirdly kinda ends up being the thing that ultimately brings Cletus down, as he changes his plan once again, vowing to leave Earth and New York behind so he can ultimately rejoin with the Carnage symbiote, but not before ultimately being put off his game just enough for Miles in his Iron Spider suit to be able to tie Cletus up just long enough for Iron Man to get inside and hit him with everything he's got. This ends up creating a second opening, which Miles ends up taking full advantage of by giving Carnage yet another Venom blast, because after all, this story started with a Venom blast, so it's only right it should end with one too. And yeah, that's kind of where the story ends. Cletus is seemingly atomized. Iron Man can barely use his suit anymore after exhausting his full power supplies. Miles ends up having to give the Iron Spider suit back, of which he's a little bummed about, but you know what, we can totally understand. And then the whole thing kind of wraps up with Miles returning home and reuniting with his family, who didn't it seem like his family was going to factor into this story, because we kept getting a bunch of flashes to what they were doing in backup stories, but no, they're just really stoked to see Miles, and Miles is happy to be alive and doing good, and I guess he finally got over his fear of Carnage. And of course, Cletus isn't actually dead, because for the third time, count it, third time in the series, we check back on in with the red goo to see that it makes an outline of Cletus's face. And so that was Carnage Reigns Omega issue number 1, everybody, and overall, as far as finales go, I thought this one was a little flat. Not particularly bad, it certainly delivered on the summer blockbuster style action and excess that it was trying to sell us. It's just a sad shame that what little characterization we actually did have throughout this event, and indeed there was some, just kind of all got drowned out by the noise at the very end. I also really question how the events of this story are going to affect all the books that crossed over with it. Miles basically just shrugs the whole thing off. Red Goblin gets lost in the shuffle. I'm sure the Carnage book will probably see more fallout from this, and Iron Man, heck, Iron Man was basically just a cameo. This is honestly the hardest book to try and review because there's honestly so little to actually say. Overall, I would say this event was a roller coaster. It had its ups and its downs, but this ending, it could have been a little better. Overall, I'd give this one a 6 out of 10. Certainly not the worst summer event I've read in recent memory, but definitely not the best one either. For what it's worth, I say I will be happy when all of these different books return to their regularly scheduled programming.
Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel again, thanking you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out my Amazon link down in the description. Yes, that's right, the Cape Joel channel officially has its own Amazon storefront now. You can pick up a comic or anything else for that matter, and if you did, you'd really be helping me in the channel. So with that out of the way everyone, I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.